You're listening to Dear Strategy, where we answer all of your questions on product and business strategy. And now, here's your host, Bob Caparelli.
Welcome to another episode of Dear Strategy, where we answer all of your questions about product and business strategy. Real questions from real people in real companies just like yours. Welcome back, strategy creators, and welcome especially to our newest subscribers from the podcasting community. I actually did a speech down in Orlando at the PodFest Multimedia Expo in the beginning of March, and hopefully it was a talk that a lot of people got some value out of, but I know we have some new subscribers as a result of that. And as promised to that group, I said that I would dedicate the month of April to really recapping what I talked about during that speech and during that session, which had to do with understanding the audience for your podcast, using the same tools that we talk about for larger companies, medium-sized companies, the same things that we reference on this show a lot. But a lot of podcasters, they're not necessarily as familiar with those tools. Many podcasters start their podcast because they're passionate about something. They want to talk about something, but they're not always thinking about who is the audience that wants to listen to that. And when you start to analyze that using the same segmentation tools and team cards and things like that that we teach to larger companies, you really start to get a different view of how you should format your podcast, because your podcast is a product like any other product, and format that so that people actually want to consume it. And so that's what we talked about there. So the next 5 episodes throughout the whole month of April, I'm going to do one each week, 5 parts. That's going to be dedicated to really recapping the tools and the theories and the things that I talked about during that segment. Now, I will tell you that if you are not a podcaster, worry not. All of this stuff applies to any product or any service. So you're all going to get a lot out of this, but I am going to use podcasting as the example as promised for that group. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And maybe you're not a podcaster and you're thinking about starting a podcast, in which case you're going to get equal value out of that. So anyway, all of that said, we hope you'll join us back here throughout the month of April. I know you're going to get a lot of value out of that and really looking forward to doing that series. In the meantime, today we have another regular episode and another great question. So let's go ahead and get right down to that. And the question is, Dear Strategy, is a 5-year strategy relevant when market trends and industries are uncertain in a volatile market? And in parentheses, this person puts 5 years visibility is quite difficult. So a couple of things that I want to say on this is, first of all, market trends and industries are always volatile to some extent. I know that there are companies that say, oh, our industry moves really slow. And I know that there are definitely industries that move slower than others. But you know what? They all have some level of volatility. In other words, you never know exactly what's going to happen, right? Some regulation, some accident, something that happens that changes the world of that. Or maybe it's some competitor that comes in or some new technology that comes in. In other words, even if the industry moves very, very slowly, it only takes one event that can change everything, and you never know when that's going to happen. So I wouldn't get too caught up in industries moving fast or slow or that kind of a thing, because they're all pretty fast. And I say that not for the person who asked this question, because the person who's asking this question is thinking that, they're in a more of a volatile market. But there might be people that are listening to this that are saying, hey, you know what? This doesn't apply to me because I'm in the utility industry, for example, and that moves really, really slowly. Nothing ever changes there. Well, you never know, right? One thing could happen and it can make it all different. So I would apply this to just about any industry. Now, when you ask about the time frame for a strategy, what's the right kind of time horizon? And in this case, 5 years, is it the right kind of a time horizon? Because it's really hard to predict what's going to happen 5 years out. So one thing that I talked about in early episodes, I guess, was that you should try to think about your strategy with respect to the life cycle of your product. So if you have a product that's only expected to last 1 or 2 years in the marketplace, you may be thinking in terms of a 2-year or 3-year strategy horizon, because your life cycle, your product's going to be come and gone by the time you're looking 3 years out. Whereas if you have a product that really is expected to last 20 years in the marketplace or even more, then you're going to want to have a longer time horizon. So in that case, 5 years, maybe even 10 years is going to be more appropriate because you want to think past just one cycle of your product's life. So it really is important to take into consideration what type of a product you have and how long you're expecting the life cycle of that product to last in the marketplace. But if you do have kind of a shorter life cycle product, which I'm going to assume this person does, and you're being asked to put a 5-year strategy in place, I'm not going to tell you that that's going to be too long. I will agree that it's going to be hard to predict what will happen in 5 years. And I will also agree that a 5-year time horizon may become a little bit irrelevant if your product is a really short life cycle, because the less information you have 5 years out, the less relevant your strategy is going to be, or less important that information is going to be, I should say. So I get kind of where this is coming from. But the only thing that bothers me about it is I would say it really doesn't matter that much as long as you state the assumptions. In other words, if somebody says put in place a 5-year plan and you have a 2-year life cycle or 3-year life cycle product, you can say, look, years 4 and 5, there's no way to predict what's going to happen because things are just moving so fast. The product isn't expected to last that long. Technology is moving faster than we know what to do with. And so 4 and 5 are a best guess at the best, right? And as long as you state that and you say that, then it doesn't really matter because you're not really committing to anything, right? The reason you're putting it out there is to say, I have it on my horizon. I'm looking at it, kind of as a long-term view and looking at it through a long-term lens because I want to make some predictions if I can, but I'm not really going to do anything with that information. I'm just going to keep it on the radar. And then what you're going to do is you're going to update that strategy on a regular basis. Now, again, if you have a shorter time horizon type of a product, updating the strategy on an annual basis may be too long, right? Maybe you have to update your strategy every 3 months or 6 months. And when I talk about updating it, I'm not just talking about updating it for you. I'm talking about updating it for your executives, investors, stakeholders, and so forth. A lot of companies get into a cadence of a 1-year strategy refresh as far as putting on the big show again, right? To executives and stakeholders. But obviously that could be shortened if you want to. So if you have a high-tech product in a volatile market, things are moving very fast, maybe you have to refresh that strategy formally more frequently. But the point is you are going to have to refresh it. So if you did put that 5-year plan in place and years 4 and 5 really were best guesses, then, you made that assumption. When you update your strategy on the next go around, let's say it is in the next year, then what you said was year 4 is now going to be year 3. So now you're going to have better information on it. What you said was year 5 is now year 4. So that gets a little closer in as well. And it just keeps rolling out as a dynamic way. So you might say, well, what's the point of putting years 4 and 5 out there if they really don't matter? Well, what it does is it shows you're thinking that far. You're trying to predict some things. You're trying to prepare for it. And frankly, even if technology moves fast and the market moves fast, it doesn't mean that your company is going to move fast, right? And so by putting those kind of longer time horizons on there, what you're doing, if nothing else, is preparing your company that, hey, we may need to make some investments. We may need to resource up. We may need to, invest in people or other things, or at least be prepared to invest. Because even though I don't know exactly what's going to happen in years 4 and 5, this is what I'm planning for. And it's going to take us a couple of years to get ready for that. So let's start getting ready now. Okay. And so that's the way that you would use this in a faster moving, more volatile market. So all that to say, I do think it's a good idea to go out, 5 years, even if you have, a 2-year or 1-year product, but just make sure those assumptions are stated and you use those years for what they're designed for, which is just basically taking your best guess and preparing your internal resources for what could come. Now, the worst thing you could do is commit to years 4 and 5 if you really have absolutely no idea what's happening. So if you've been asked to put a 5-year plan in place and you really don't know what's happening in those last couple of years and you don't state that, then people are going to hold you to it. That's not a good idea. So make sure that you are honest with yourself, honest with your executives, and you just state whatever assumptions you've made. And in that case, it doesn't really matter how far you go out because you're giving people the right expectation of what those years mean. Okay, so hopefully that's helpful. Again, if you have a question that you want to be asked on the show, please go out to dearstrategy.com or dearstrategy.net. You can click on the Ask a Question link and ask a question from there. Also, please don't forget to subscribe to the show. I always forget to ask people to do this. I don't really know that it moves the needle one way or another, but I have to say it because I really would like more subscribers. If you enjoy this show, hitting that subscribe button on whatever your podcast aggregator of choice is really helps us, because it helps us move up in the rankings. More people will find the show, and more people will be able to benefit from these resources and this advice. And of course, don't forget to go out to strategygeneration.com. Check out the website of our sponsor and the company that I work for and founded, and see if there's anything of interest there. And if you have any questions about anything on that site, feel free to hit the contact link, and that'll come directly to one of us, and we will be able to answer your questions and hopefully engage in some future workshop with you if that's what you so desire. So while you're doing all that, don't forget to make time for the plan, and we'll see you back here on another episode of Dear Strategy. Thanks for joining.
Thank you for listening to Dear Strategy with Bob Caparelli. To learn more or to submit a question to be featured on our show, please visit us at dearstrategy.net.